Chapter 17. The Watchers. The incident with the Romanian IP had been contained. Secrets were in Secrets Manager. Credentials were rotated. Network controls were tightened. But Priya had asked the question that ended Chapter 16. If something unusual appeared in CloudTrail, how would we know? The honest answer was, they probably wouldn't. CloudTrail logs thousands of events per day. No human reads all of them. Priya checked manually every week, but that meant something could happen on a Tuesday and not be noticed until the following Monday. We need something that watches the logs for us, she said. Maya looked up. Automatically? Automatically. Tom's second question of the day. How much does that cost? 3 threat categories. Security threats against a cloud application generally fall into 3 categories. Volume attacks, DDoS. An attacker sends so much traffic that your application can't respond to legitimate users. The attack might be millions of HTTP requests or a flood of TCP/SIN packets designed to exhaust your server's connection table. Application attacks, exploits. An attacker sends specifically crafted requests designed to exploit weaknesses in your application. SQL injection, cross-site scripting, malformed input that crashes a parser. Behavioral anomalies, reconnaissance and compromise. API calls that shouldn't be happening. Someone querying your entire user database at 3 a.m. Unusual IAM activity. Credentials being used from a new country. Or network traffic to unexpected destinations. AWS has a dedicated service for each. AWS Shield, DDoS protection. AWS WAF, application layer protection. Amazon GuardDuty, behavioral threat detection. AWS Shield, the DDoS absorber. AWS Shield Standard is enabled automatically for all AWS customers at no additional charge. It protects against the most common Layer 3 network and Layer 4 transport DDoS attacks, SIN floods, UDP floods, DNS amplification attacks. CloudFront, Route 53, and Elastic Load Balancing sit at the edge of AWS's network. When a DDoS attack targets your application, it hits these managed services first. AWS's network infrastructure absorbs the attack before it reaches your EC2 instances. AWS Shield Advanced is the premium tier, $3,000 a month per organization. It adds protection for EC2, ELB, CloudFront, Global Accelerator, and Route 53. Near real-time attack notifications. Access to the AWS Shield Response Team, SRT, security engineers who can help you respond to attacks. Cost protection. If an attack causes your bill to spike, AWS credits the surge costs. Enhanced DDoS detection and mitigation at Layer 7, application layer. $3,000 a month? Tom said. For enterprises handling millions in revenue, a DDoS that takes them down for 2 hours costs more than $3,000. Priya said. Tom did the math silently. We'll start with standard, he said finally. AWS WAF, the application filter. AWS WAF, Web Application Firewall, operates at the HTTP level. It inspects the content of web requests before they reach your application. WAF is configured with web ACLs, access control lists, rule sets that define what to allow, block, or count. WAF can be attached to CloudFront distributions, inspect requests at the edge, globally. Application load balancers, inspect requests at the regional level. API gateway. WAF managed rules. AWS and third-party vendors publish pre-built rule sets. AWS Managed Rules Core Rule Set protects against OWASP Top 10 vulnerabilities, SQL injection, XSS, command injection, path traversal, etc. AWS Managed Rules Known Bad Inputs blocks requests matching known attack patterns. AWS Managed Rules Amazon IP Reputation List blocks IPs known to be associated with botnets and scanners. AWS Managed Rules Bot Control identifies and manages bot traffic. You can also create custom rules. Block any request with a user agent header containing SQL map, a common SQL injection scanner. Rate limit. Allow no more than 1,000 requests per IP per 5 minutes. Block requests that contain script in any parameter value. For Nimbus, the practical setup, WAF on the CloudFront distribution, with the core rule set enabled. This blocks the most common attack patterns before requests ever reach the EC2 instances. Amazon GuardDuty. The behavioral analyst GuardDuty is fundamentally different from Shield and WAF. It doesn't block attacks. It detects unusual behavior. GuardDuty continuously analyzes AWS CloudTrail logs, IAM changes, API calls, console logins. VPC flow logs, network traffic patterns within your VPC. DNS query logs, what your instances are resolving. Known malware often resolves specific C2 domains. Machine learning models identify patterns that deviate from your baseline. GuardDuty generates findings, categorized alerts, when it detects anomalies. Examples of what GuardDuty can detect: an IAM user logging in from an unrecognized IP address in a country they've never used before. API calls being made from a Tor exit node, an EC2 instance communicating with a known cryptocurrency mining pool. Unusually high API call volume, credential abuse or scanning. An S3 bucket being accessed by an IP address that has been flagged for malicious activity. Outbound traffic to a domain known to be associated with malware command and control. This is what would have caught the Romanian IP, Leo said quietly. If we'd had GuardDuty enabled, it would have flagged the EC2 instance making outbound connections to an unrecognized external IP at 2 a.m., Priya confirmed. How much does it cost? GuardDuty pricing is based on the volume of logs analyzed. CloudTrail events, VPC flow data, DNS queries. For a small to medium application, typically $50 to $150 per month. At scale, it's still a small fraction of infrastructure costs. Tom pulled up the console and enabled it. Connecting the three services Shield, WAF, and GuardDuty work at different layers and complement each other. Service layer protects against action. AWS Shield, network transport L3, L4, DDoS floods, absorbs, mitigates attacks. AWS WAF, application L7, OWASP top 10 bots, scrapers, or counts requests. GuardDuty, behavioral, all logs, anomalies, compromised credentials, malware, detects and alerts. Shield stops the flood. WAF filters the water. GuardDuty watches the plumbing for unusual flow patterns. CloudTrail, the foundation. All three services rely on logs. AWS CloudTrail is the logging service that captures every API call in your AWS account. Who called what, when, from where, with what result. CloudTrail is enabled by default for a 90-day history in the console. To retain logs long-term, 1. Create a trail that writes to an S3 bucket. 2. Optionally send to CloudWatch logs for real-time alerting. 3. Enable log file validation to detect if logs are tampered with. GuardDuty, AWS Config, and Security Hub all read from CloudTrail. Without CloudTrail logs, these services have nothing to analyze. AWS Security Hub, the dashboard. If you're running multiple AWS accounts or need a consolidated view of security findings, AWS Security Hub aggregates findings from GuardDuty, Inspector, Vulnerability Assessment, Macy, Data Privacy, Config, and Firewall Manager into a single dashboard. It also checks your configuration against security best practices, the AWS Foundational Security Best Practices Standard, and the CIS AWS Foundations Benchmark. For Nimbus, Security Hub wasn't needed yet. When they grew to 3 accounts, dev, staging, production, it would become useful. Strengths and limitations. AWS Shield. Standard. Free and automatic. No reason not to use it. Advanced. Excellent for high-profile targets. Expensive for small teams. AWS WAF. Managed rule groups simplify setup significantly. Custom rules require understanding of HTTP attack patterns. Rate limiting is a powerful feature often overlooked. WAF is not a substitute for secure application code. It's a defense in-depth layer. GuardDuty. Extremely low effort to enable, a few clicks. Findings require human review and response. GuardDuty detects, it doesn't fix. False positives occur. Some legitimate activity looks anomalous to ML models. 30-day free trial. Worth enabling immediately. Summary. AWS Shield Standard. Free automatic DDoS protection at layer 3-4. Always on. AWS Shield Advanced. Premium DDoS protection with SRT access and cost protection. Enterprise use case. AWS WAF. Application layer firewall. Inspect and filter HTTP requests. Attach to CloudFront, ALB, or API gateway. Use managed rule groups for OWASP top 10 protection. Amazon GuardDuty. Behavioral threat detection. Analyzes CloudTrail, VPC flow logs, and DNS logs. Generates findings for anomalous activity. CloudTrail. The foundation of all AWS security logging. Enable a trail writing to S3 for long-term retention. These services complement each other. Shield at the network layer, WAF at the application layer, GuardDuty at the behavioral layer. Exam tips. SAAC3 domain. Design secure architectures. Domain 1, Task 1.2. Shield Standard versus Advanced. Standard is free and automatic. Advanced costs money and adds the SRT, cost protection, and better detection. Exam signals for Advanced. large-scale DDoS, SLA guarantee during attacks, financial protection against DDoS-related cost spikes. WAF use case signals, block SQL injection, block cross-site scripting, rate limit API calls, block specific user agents, OWASP top 10 protection. WAF. GuardDuty signals, detect unusual API activity, identify compromised credentials, flag anomalous EC2 network connections, threat intelligence, GuardDuty. WAF attachment, can attach to CloudFront, global, ALB regional, API gateway, regional, AppSync. GuardDuty data sources, CloudTrail management events, CloudTrail S3 data events, VPC flow logs, DNS logs. Exam may ask which data source is relevant to a specific detection scenario. Macy, often confused with GuardDuty. Macy uses ML to detect sensitive data in S3, PII, credentials, financial data. GuardDuty detects threats and anomalies in behavior. Different use cases. Exercises. Exercise 1. Recall. Explain the difference between AWS WAF and Amazon GuardDuty. What does each service protect against, and at what layer does each operate? Hint, think about WAF as a filter on incoming requests and GuardDuty as a behavioral analyst watching your logs. Exercise 2. Exam practice scenario. A retail company's website is being targeted by a botnet that sends millions of requests per hour to their product search API. The requests appear legitimate, valid user agent strings, valid session cookies, but don't result in purchases. They're scraping product prices. The attack is causing legitimate customers to experience slow response times. Which combination of services best addresses this threat? A. AWS Shield Advanced and CloudFront. B. AWS WAF with rate-limiting rules and CloudFront. C. Amazon GuardDuty and AWS Shield Standard. D. Network ACLs blocking the botnet's IP ranges. Hint 1. The requests are HTTP level, application layer. Which service operates at the HTTP layer? Hint 2. Botnets use many different IP addresses. Blocking specific IP ranges at the NACL level is ineffective against large botnets. Hint 3. Rate limiting by IP address can slow down the scraping even if you can't block it entirely. Answer B. Explanation: AWS WAF can rate limit requests per IP address, reducing the impact of high-volume scraping from any single source. CloudFront distributes the incoming traffic across AWS's edge network, absorbing the volume and protecting the origin. WAF rules can also match on request patterns, rapid sequential requests to the same API endpoint to identify scraping behavior. Why not A? Shield Advanced protects against DDoS floods, Layer 3-4. The scenario describes application layer scraping, Layer 7 HTTP requests, which Shield doesn't inspect. Why not C? GuardDuty detects anomalies in your AWS account behavior. It doesn't block incoming HTTP requests. Shield Standard doesn't handle application layer attacks. Why not D? Large botnets use thousands of IP addresses from distributed sources. Blocking specific ranges is a whack-a-mole approach that fails against sophisticated botnets. SAA CO3 domain, design secure architectures. Task 1.2. Exercise 3. Architecture challenge optional. Nimbus is considering their threat model as they prepare to handle credit card data. A PCI DSS compliance review requires protection against network layer DDoS attacks, application layer filtering for known web exploits, logging of all API calls to a tamper-evident long-term store, detection of unusual access patterns to the payment service. Map each requirement to a specific AWS service or configuration. Is Shield Standard sufficient, or does the PCI DSS context suggest advanced? Where would you attach WAF? The goal is to practice mapping compliance requirements to AWS services. Post-credits scene, GuardDuty was enabled. 48 hours later, it generated its first finding. EC2 instance I-0ABC123 is communicating with a known Tor exit node. Leo looked at the instance ID. That's the internal monitoring instance, he said. The one I set up to run network diagnostics. Is it supposed to communicate with Tor exit nodes? No. He paused. Why would it? He pulled up the instance. Someone had installed a tool on it, a legitimate open-source network scanner that it turned out also communicated with Tor infrastructure for anonymized data collection. So, the tool was calling home, Priya said. Without my knowledge, Leo confirmed. That's a supply chain risk. A dependency that does things you didn't authorize. Leo uninstalled the tool. He set up a process to review every third-party tool before installation. Is this the level of paranoia we're at now? Maya asked. Yes, said Priya. Is this the level we should have always been at? Maya asked. Also yes, said Priya. In the next chapter, what happens when the data center in Virginia disappears? And why Nimbus keeps running?